clerk will read the caption to House Bill 212.
House Bill 212 by Representative Jenkins of the 136th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 10 and Title 43, the official of Georgia annotated relating to barbers and cosmetologists, so as to allow individuals and facilities to provide blow-dry styling, braiding, threading, and the application of cosmetics without being licensed by the State Board of Cosmetology and Barbers. This bill has referred to the Committee on Regulated Industries. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Representative Jenkins is recognized to present the bill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I rise to present House Bill 212. House Bill 212 amends Title 43 by repealing and replacing Chapter 10. This chapter relates to cosmetology and barbers. This bill was brought as an agency bill to reorganize, modernize, and clarify current regulation. Additional provisions were added, approximately line 237 to 264. These provisions allow certain niche beauty services to be performed without licensing if a health and safety course is completed. So the niche beauty services addressed are essentially what you do when you get up in the morning and get ready to go. So this is blow dry styling. This is the practice of washing, drying, and arranging hair. This isn't cutting. This isn't dyeing. This isn't using chemical processes to alter the structure of the hair. Threading is a traditional form of hair removal from South Asia and the Middle East. It is a practice of using only a piece of cotton thread to form loops around and remove unwanted facial hair. Makeup application. This is the practice of applying cosmetics to a person's face. So this bill actually corrects inconsistencies in the regulation about this. Currently, our cosmetology laws basically regulate makeup application based on what you do after the makeup's applied. So what I'll, as an example, for instance, if you're doing film, television, or entertainment, a license is not required. If you're doing cosmetic counter sales, a license is not required. It even makes exceptions for special events. So this law modifies that just to exclude that from licensure, since most practices are already excluded anyway. So these things we're talking about, this is not the first time we've addressed this. Back in 2006, this body exempted hair braiding in much the same manner we're doing here. So this is consistent with what we've done in the past, what we're doing with these certain safe practices. So in order to do this, we addressed health and safety concerns by requiring a 4-hour annual health and safety class. These classes are approved by the Georgia Board of Cosmetology. It's what licensed cosmetologists already take. So this is an entrepreneur's bill. This bill creates opportunity. The most likely people to benefit from this bill are women, single moms, those who do not have higher education, those that can't afford higher education, people of color, immigrant communities. To do these niche practices, you have to complete one of 3 licenses. These licenses take between 1,000 and 1,500 hours of training, cost about $17,500. So again, with low income Georgians, it becomes not only a question of the cost of this training, but also often the larger question is being able to devote the time to it when you're trying to make ends meet. So these exceptions are common. 32 states exempt these practices in some form or another. There are examples that show deregulation of these practices create opportunity. In Mississippi, once they deregulated hair braiding, they have 1,200 registered braiders. Louisiana, you have to have a cosmetology license to do hair braiding. There's only 32 registered braiders in the state of Louisiana. So and there is a larger African-American population in the state of Louisiana. So that either says that, and what that most likely says to me, that these practices are occurring unlicensed and again, without any health and safety training. So states have changed their laws as a result of lawsuits. And I just implore this body not to of Georgia to seek matter. This is something we continue creating good public policy. I'm the young single mother, and I all the sacrifices she had, and as well, all the juggling she had to do to make, the dinner we ate was the money she made to may have been the last 12 hours. So they're liberating for our lower income Georgians. As a similar story I recently retired Army about 7 years ago. And, I'm a helicopter pilot, but when I retired into a very bad job market, and, what's common with military people transitioning to the civilian world is you have a skill mismatch. Ultimately, if there's an abundance of applicants, the applicants from the civilian community will always have the experience that more closely aligns with the job market. So it took me a while to transition. Like a lot of veterans, I was about a year before I was able to get back into my profession. So during this time, although I was retired, that's about a third of my salary. Disability came much later. I was in a period of having to make ends meet. I didn't need a new profession. I just needed to make some money for a while. And so I had a bulldozer. I did mechanic work. I built fences, whatever I could do. And thankfully, I had opportunity because I wasn't regulated out of the ability to earn a living. And that's what we need to think about. In closing, this bill creates opportunity. Birth, death, marriage, divorce, recessions, disability, life happens. These events particularly affect low-income Georgians. Where we can, we must reduce the burden of occupational licensing so people have the flexibility to support their families. And here we can pontificate how this license will help Georgians. And I'll tell you, the answer to that question is about as infinite as the 11 million Georgians out there. In my military career, I've had the opportunity to live in country where bodies just like this make the financial decisions and they decide where the restaurants and the hotels and everything goes. And, that's not what we do here. Here, our job is to create opportunity. I encourage you to do this. In this case, the liberty and the opportunity we create here today is not for the Georgians that have lobbyists out in the hallway. I know we do wonderful things for industry every day, but the people we help here, there's no lobbyists in the hallways for them. They're not as organized as perhaps some people opposing this. Their voices may not ring as loud in this chamber, but their voices are important. And I encourage you to listen. And let's create opportunity here. And I encourage you to pass House Bill 212.
Gentlemen, yield for questions.
I do yield for questions.
Just for informational purposes, we have about 10 people signed up to speak to the bill.
Oh my.
And we have about, I can't count that high with my shoes on, to have questions on the bill. We'll recognize Representative Moore for the first question. To your left.
Good evening. Isn't it true that you know absolutely nothing about a woman of color's hair? And is it also not true that I am highly offended that you would want to take away a license that potentially would give me a disease or pull the rest of my hair out? Why I not want someone licensed?
Okay, so I'm not proposing taking a license away. What was the other thing that you mentioned?
Well, that's what this bill is all about.
It's actually not. This
So
bill
that
We'll have
so
a
that the state of Georgia can
question
make
and
more
answer.
money.
If the lady will yield, we'll have a question, and the gentleman in the well needs to answer that question.
true that this bill would require women who spit on thread, women who know nothing about taking care of edges and chemical reactions to threading and braiding to take away a license just so that the state of Georgia can make money?
So Georgia currently doesn't license braiders, so this bill has nothing to do with that. So it won't take a license for braiding.
You're not requiring a license for it.
There's not a license required for braiding hair in Georgia today prior to the passage of this bill.
From reading this,
The lady has a question, state a question.
isn't it true that you're requiring no license for this? Or for braiders, or for stringers and the threaders who do your eyebrows, and they thread hair, they thread your eyebrows, they thread your mouth, your chin.
So this bill does exempt thread licensing.
You know, it's a-
Braiders are currently exempt from licensing in Georgia currently. And so the
Is it
bill
true that
doesn't change that.
You're not for a license for this?
No, I'm not changing to ask for a license for braiders.
And isn't it also true that you're asking for this bill to pass so that the state of Georgia can make more money off of doing something that's a little illegal? And I yield.
I'm not, I don't understand how the state of Georgia would make more money, but I do hope it creates opportunity for Georgians to support their families and make more money.
Gentleman yield for a question. Gentleman yield.
I yield.
Representative Barnes has a question. To your left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Is it not true that if an unlicensed person washes my hair and it falls out, that I cannot file any legal ramifications for them making my hair fall out?
So if someone could wash your hair and make it fall out, your legal recourse would be no different than with a licensed or unlicensed person, if that was possible.
Does the gentleman yield? Again?
I yield.
Thank you. Is it not true that I take pride in my hair and I take really good care of my hair, and if an unlicensed person does not take courses or classes to take care of my hair and my hair falls out, that I can take legal actions?
Well, again, I'm sure you do take good care of your hair, and if having a licensed person wash your hair would make you feel comfortable, that's still going to be a choice that you can make. So we're not removing licensure from washing hair. You can still choose a licensed person to wash your hair, and if you choose to have someone without a license wash it, it really doesn't change your legal recourse if that
Not funny.
something happens.
Does the gentleman yield for one more question?
I do.
Thank you. Is it
Lady
not?
will suspend. The member asking and the member answering the question can't hear each other. So
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
we hope you members will certainly respect this process. Lady will continue.
Thank you. Is it not true that if this bill passes, it not only helps low single families, minorities, but it helps everyone who wants to move into this business unlicensed?
So the things that we are exempting from license would allow them, yes, to do that without a license. Yes, I don't know quite what you're asking there.
Gentlemen, yield for another question.
I'll yield for one more.
Representative Maynard to your right has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Is it not true that this is definitely a complicated bill? It has some good points and some bad points. Do you further yield?
I would say I disagree that it has bad points, but go ahead.
So the bill does not have a minimum age. And so my daughter, Alexis, who's 10, she thinks it would be really cute to open up a parlor and wash girls' hair because now she can. But isn't it also true that that requires a lot of liability insurance? So whether it were my 10-year-old daughter or a 40-year-old person, if you're going to wash hair and it falls out, as someone said, and hopefully it won, isn't it further true that liability insurance is important for those things?
Liability insurance is important.
And is it further true that this is a business opportunity? Because one of the things that you mentioned earlier, braiders are not licensed, and they're also not required to take that 4-hour course that is now required.
That is a current part of Georgia law that this bill did not address. So this bill doesn't address braiders. In
But
that,
if
I
they-
mean, it's already legal for braiders to be exempt from licensing. So this bill does not change that.
Is it further true that if they wash the hair, though, they have to take the 4-hour course?
This bill requires a health and safety training in order to practice these services.
Thank you.
So with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Now, we have some speakers lined up here to speak, to bring some clarity to this issue. We're first going to recognize Chairman Parsons to speak to the bill. I'm sure he can offer some insight here. Chairman Parsons.
Oh, thank you, Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to come up here.
Gentlemen, yield. That any room's empty. I can't see any, if the gentleman will recede from the well. Gentleman will step down from the well. Mr. Chairman, if you'll step down for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Y'all know, I want to go home, y'all want to go home, so let's be respectful. And we've had a good day. So let's be respectful and hear the member in the well and hear the questions from everyone present here so we can move on with this important issue. I would certainly appreciate it, and we're going to do just that. Back door is open, that door is open, and that one's open. My mama told me not to point, so I'm sorry, but that's what we're going to do. Let's move on. Mr. Chairman, you're recognized to go back to the well.
All right, thank you, Speaker Burns. I signed up to speak on this bill. I'll be very brief. When you sign up, you have to sign up to, I guess, they always ask you speaking in favor of the bill or opposed to it. And I can tell you, I'm going to vote against it. I'm not going to try to influence anybody one way or the other way that they vote. But I would just say that, I hadn't looked at this bill. I heard about it the last couple of days, and I pulled it out of the book a while ago. And I know it went through committee. I greatly respect the committee process. So I know that it's been vetted in a committee process. So I'm not going to try at all to pick things apart there in the bill because I know it's already been vetted. But I would point out that it does actually repeal a whole chapter of Title 43. It repeals it entirely. So if you look at the bill, all you see is new language. Now, I don't know what the old language was. If I had time and if I really wanted to come up here and talk specifically about points of this bill, I would have to go pull the code up and see what that current chapter says, but it's not in here. I noticed that they're writing more bills like this, I believe, but the whole bill, if you look at this, it's like 19 pages, 18 or 19 pages of new code. That's what it shows, all underlined, new code. So I would just say, I'm going to vote against it. I would just caution anyone before you cast a vote to really consider this. It had been mentioned about the lobbyist down in the hall. I've never talked to any lobbyist about this, and I've carried some cosmetology bills years ago. Never have talked to a lobbyist about it, but who I do talk to about these a lot of times are the ladies who have cut my hair and the gentlemen who've cut my hair over the years. And they have opinions on this kind of thing, and they've gone through the training to either cut hair or to style hair or whatever. And they've gone through either gone through school or they've gone through a training program there at one of the styling or barber shops themselves through those things. And I think it's very important to them. They're professionals. The people that cut your hair, style your hair, whatever it is, they are professionals and they work very, very hard. You know, at some point, and they didn't all come from some kind of privileged background, I can tell you that. And they've gone into it and put in the time, put in the training, put in the study, the experience to get their licenses. And I think we need to take into consideration that. But I guess the main thing I would say, if you vote yes on it, you know, you might have some questions about it, you know, this weekend or next week when you get your hair cut, go get it styled or whatever, because they don't have lobbyists out here. These are the young ladies and the men cut hair and style it. They don't have lobbyists out here. Those are the people who are going to talk to you about it if we do something that they find that we've done some irrational action down here that they didn't ask us to do. I don't even know who did ask for this to be done. But I would just ask that you think about that. And you might look up the current language. You're replacing a whole paragraph, like 18 pages. So before you vote, you might want to think about what is it that you're replacing? And that's all I can say about it. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded well. Thank you, Chairman. Representative Jasmine Clark is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to ask you to vote no on this bill. And while I do not necessarily think that the entire bill is bad, I do have several concerns. So there are a lot of new faces in here. So I will, I'm only saying this part for those who don't know already. I have a PhD in microbiology. And so I know a little bit about bacteria, fungus, and things like that that you could possibly come in contact with at a hair salon or a nail salon, getting your mane and things like that. And so one of my major concerns with this bill is the fact that we say certain people don't have to be licensed, and one can argue, okay, they're not dealing with chemicals, they're doing things that someone could do at home. So yes, they shouldn't need a license to do these things. However, in the provision that asks for them to take a health and safety course, they're only required to take up to 4 hours of health and safety ever. Everyone else in this profession has to get continuing education credits. And the reason why is because things change. As the industry change, as we learn new things, as different things, 20 years ago, MRSA might not have been as big of a deal as it is now when it comes to antibiotic resistant bacteria. And so we want to make sure that individuals are getting up-to-date information. And so I think that something that is critically missing from this bill is a requirement that those health and safety courses be renewed ever so often. I don't think that's too much to ask for. And I think we're dealing with people's faces. We're dealing with people's hair. We don't want people being subjected to fungal or bacterial infections on their faces that can't be treated with certain types of antibiotics. We don't want people's hair falling out. And these are things that could be, these are things that we need to consider when we're having people so intimately in contact with our bodies. And so that's one thing that I would say we need to have renewal requirements for the health and safety course if, in fact, they're going to have to take one. And another thing, the gentleman in the well, the sponsor of the bill, made an attempt to describe threading, and he did kind of a good job. So I'm not going to take that away from him. However, I have been to a threading salon, and I'm not sure how many people in here have been to a threading salon. But one of the things that happens when they thread, they take the thread and they basically roll it up against the hairs on your, I'll just say your eyebrows. and then they rip that from your skin. And so they're ripping it from the follicle. A lot of times when they do that, as they're doing it, they hold the thread right here in their mouth as they're holding it. That introduces the potential for some type of bacterial or fungal infection. I think it's important that individuals that are doing that practice actually have shown that they understand the ramifications of doing this. And so I believe that while a lot of the braiders and shampoo girls, I've been to plenty of salons that had them, that makes sense that they may not need a license, although I do think the health and safety course is good. I do think that threaders should require a license because that's a little bit more intimate. Most people I know are not threading themselves at home. That is something that someone else really has to do to you. And so this bill is not where it needs to be for the health and safety of Georgians. And if we're going to completely repeal a section of the code and replace it with something else, let's replace it with something good. And so I'm asking you to vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the ball.
There are no further speakers. For what purpose does Chairman Powell rise?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I would request that HB 212 be laid on the table.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 212 to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 10 and Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to barbers and cosmetologists.
On the gentleman's motion that HB 212 be tabled, is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. HB 212 is on the table.